So today we're going to be tying up a triangle bug, which is a really great fly, especially for panfish, bass. You can tie it up in a variety of colors. We're going to tie ours up in green today, and I'm going to use green foam. And you're going to cut off a strip a little bit, just about twice as wide as the hook gap, or the gap here. And I want it to be just a little bit over twice as long as the shank of the hook. And what you're going to do after you've cut this little strip out, so we're going to cut it, we're going to not cut it, but we're going to fold it in half. So it's sort of like this. And then I'm going to cut from the center middle, not where it's folded, but on the flapping back halves. And you're just going to cut to that corner like that. I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, if I can hold it in my fingers. So you're left with a nice piece of foam like that. Then I just take the tip of my scissors, put it right in the center. I'm trying to do this in a way you can see it. And I just stick my scissor points through, and that you'll see later we're going to kind of straddle the eye of the hook with that. So you're left with a piece of foam just about like that. I'm going to start just with some green 14-aught thread. Start it behind the eye of the hook. And we're just going to lay a thread base on the hook shank here. So we're just going to take this back to the bend of the hook. I really don't care if there are some gaps in here. I just want a thread base. We'll go ahead and remove our thread. We'll take a few more wraps back to where the barb of the hook would be. Barbless hook, so I can't use that as a measure. Once I get back to about there, I'm just going to take my thread back up to behind the eye. I'm actually going to leave it probably about 3 eye lengths behind the eye of the hook. So next I've just taken some green chartreuse bucktail. I've cut off a chunk of that, probably about 1/4 of the width of a pencil. And I want my tails on this to be kind of long, so I'm going to go ahead and it's going to be longer than the shank of the hook. So I'm going to kind of take that measure. And that's just going to depend on how you want your fly to be. And you'll use a different color than chartreuse if you're not using green. So whatever kind of matches. I'm going to take a wrap, kind of starting to secure that down. And then I'm just going to secure this to the top of my hook shank. Most important is to keep this on top. So I'm just going to move my way back to where we ended our thread at the hook bend. Trying to avoid that hook point so we don't lose our thread. And once I'm back there, I'll look at it. That length looks good to me. That foam that we tie on is going to overlap that a little bit, so I want to make sure I can see some of that tail sticking out. And I'm just moving my thread back forward, maybe taking a little bit firmer wraps, securing this down. And I'm just going to take the balance of this. I'm going to hold it kind of at an angle so I can cut it off at an angle. And once I've got that done, we'll just go ahead and clean this up a little bit. This is a very forgiving fly, but it actually works really well as well. So I've kind of got that piece in place. And once again, I'm going to leave my thread a couple of eye lengths behind the eye of the hook. So next I'm going to take a couple of rubber legs. These are chartreuse and they're barred. You'll match that to whatever color you're tying, but since we're doing green here, these work great. I want to tie them in right in the center. going to take a couple of wraps to secure those in place. And then I'm just going to take a nice kind of cross wrap on that. The first one can be a little bit challenging, but once you get that kind of figure eight in place, now I can just take a few more wraps. Just doing that figure eight, that'll help us keep those on top of the hook shank. So now that I have those tied in, I'm going to grab my scissors. I'm going to pull those down. I want to keep them kind of tight, so you don't want to stretch them too much, but I want these legs to be pretty even. And I want them to be pretty long. So I'm going to go at least twice the length of the hook shank here. And with those cut off, we're going to go ahead and we're going to transition our thread to the other back side of those. They're going to stick. You're going to see them stick to my thread all throughout the rest of the pattern, because that's just what rubber legs do. And I'm just moving my thread back to the very back. So we should be looking kind of about like that at this point. Next, I like to take some super glue, and I'm just going to put some glue right on where those legs are, but I also want to put some on the body here. I'm going to put a little bit on the underneath. Super glue my fingers together like I usually do. I'm going to take my piece of foam now, and I'm going to stick the eye of the hook right through where we already poke that hole through. And then I'm going to fold this right over the center. I've already cut a little bit off the bottom here because I don't want this long piece cramming into the end of the hook here on the bottom. So kind of got that. I want to keep my legs separated here. Kind of work around everything, including my thread. And once I have that kind of on the center here, I'm just going to pinch all of this pretty tight for about 30 seconds. Now I'll cut here so you don't have to watch me sit here for 30 seconds. So after you've kind of clamped that down a little bit tight, now I'm just going to take some wraps, barely catching the back end of the underside there. Try to get that straight across. Kind of pull that, cinch that tight, and then we'll just take a few more wraps. About like that. And here comes one of the trickier parts. We're going to whip finish. So I'm just going to grab my whip finisher, go over the top of those legs, making sure it's staying on that band of thread. And for me, sometimes it's just easier to let those legs do what they're going to do. I'll go ahead and pull that tight. And that's really all there is to it. Great panfish, like I said, bass pattern. The triangle bug tied here in green. Grab yourself a hook, throw it in your vise, and give this one a shot. There we go. He ate that triangle bug.